The United States Environmental Protection Agency is an agency of the federal government of the United States which was created for the purpose of protecting human health and the environment by writing and enforcing regulations based on laws passed by Congress. The EPA was proposed by President Richard Nixon and began operation on December 2, 1970, after Nixon signed an executive order. The order establishing the EPA was ratified by committee hearings in the House and Senate. The agency is led by its administrator, who is appointed by the President and approved by Congress. The current administrator is Gina McCarthy. The EPA is not a cabinet department, but the administrator is normally given cabinet rank. The EPA has its headquarters in Washington, D.C., regional offices for each of the agency's 10 regions, and 27 laboratories. The agency conducts environmental assessment, research, and education. It has the responsibility of maintaining and enforcing national standards under a variety of environmental laws, in consultation with state, tribal, and local governments. It delegates some permitting, monitoring, and enforcement responsibility to U.S. states and the federally recognized tribes. EPA enforcement powers include fines, sanctions, and other measures. The agency also works with industries and all levels of government in a wide variety of voluntary pollution prevention programs and energy conservation efforts. The agency has approximately 15,193 full-time employees and engages many more people on a contractual basis. More than half of EPA human resources are engineers, scientists, and environmental protection specialists. Other groups include legal, public affairs, financial, and information technologists. History. Beginning in the late 1950s and through the 1960s, Congress reacted to increasing public concern about the impact that human activity could have on the environment. A key legislative option to address this concern was the declaration of a national environmental policy. Advocates of this approach argued that without a specific policy, federal agencies were neither able nor inclined to consider the environmental impacts of their actions in fulfilling the agency mission. The statute that ultimately addressed this issue was the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969. Senator Henry M. Jackson proposed and helped write S. 75, the bill that eventually became the National Environmental Policy Act. The law was signed by President Nixon on January 1, 1970. NEPA was the first of several major environmental laws passed in the 1970s. It declared a national policy to protect the environment and created a Council on Environmental Quality in the Executive Office of the President. To implement the national policy, NEPA required that a detailed statement of environmental impacts be prepared for all major federal actions significantly affecting the environment. The detailed statement would ultimately be referred to as an environmental impact statement. In 1970, President Richard Nixon proposed an executive reorganization that would consolidate many of the federal government's environmental responsibilities under one agency, a new Environmental Protection Agency. That reorganization proposal was reviewed and passed by the House and Senate. For at least 10 years before NEPA was enacted, Congress debated issues that the Act would ultimately address. The Act was modeled on the Resources and Conservation Act of 1959, introduced by Senator James E. Murray in the 86th Congress. That bill would have established an Environmental Advisory Council in the office of the President, declared a national environmental policy, and required the preparation of an annual environmental report. In the years following the introduction of Senator Murray's bill, similar bills were introduced and hearings were held to discuss the state of the environment and Congress's potential responses to perceived problems. In 1968, a joint House-Senate colloquium was convened by the chairman of the Senate Committee on Interior and Insular Affairs and the House Committee on Science and Astronautics to discuss the need for and potential means of implementing a national environmental policy. In the colloquium, some members of Congress expressed a continuing concern over federal agency actions affecting the environment. The EPA began regulating greenhouse gases from mobile and stationary sources of air pollution under the Clean Air Act for the first time on January 2, 2011. Standards for mobile sources have been established pursuant to Section 202 of the CAA, and GHGs from stationary sources are controlled under the authority of Part C of Title I of the Act. See the page Regulation of Greenhouse Gases under the Clean Air Act for further information. In May 2013, Congress renamed the EPA headquarters as the William Jefferson Clinton Federal Building, after former President Bill Clinton. Organization: Officers, Office of the Administrator, Office of Administration and Resources Management, Office of Air and Radiation, Office of Chemical Safety and Pollution Prevention, Office of the Chief Financial Officer, Office of Enforcement and Compliance Assurance, Office of Environmental Information, Office of General Counsel, Office of Inspector General, Office of International and Tribal Affairs, Office of Research and Development, Office of Land and Emergency Management, Office of Water, Regions. Each EPA regional office is responsible within its states for implementing the agency programs, except those programs that have been specifically delegated to states. Region 1, responsible within the states of Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Vermont. Region 2, responsible within the states of New Jersey and New York. It is also responsible for the U.S. territories of Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Region 3, responsible within the states of Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, and the District of Columbia. Region 4, responsible within the states of Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. Region 5, responsible within the states of Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Region 6, responsible within the states of Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. Region 7, responsible within the states of Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska. Region 8, responsible within the states of Colorado, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Utah, and Wyoming. Region 9, responsible within the states of Arizona, California, Hawaii, Nevada, the territories of Guam and American Samoa, and the Navajo Nation. Region 10, responsible within the states of Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. Each regional office also implements programs on Indian tribal lands, except those programs delegated to tribal authorities. Related legislation. The legislation here is general environmental protection legislation, and may also apply to other units of the government, including the Department of the Interior and the Department of Agriculture. Air 1955 Air Pollution Control Act, Place 84 to 159. 1963 Clean Air Act, Place 88 to 206. 1965 Motor Vehicle Air Pollution Control Act, Place 89 to 272. 1966 Clean Air Act Amendments, Place 89 to 675. 1967 Air Quality Act, Place 90 to 148. 1970 Clean Air Act Extension, Place 91 to 604. 1977 Clean Air Act Amendments Place 95 to 95. 1990 Clean Air Act Amendments Place 101 to 549. Water 1948 Water Pollution Control Act Place 80 to 845. 1965 Water Quality Act Place 89 to 234. 1966 Clean Waters Restoration Act Place 89 to 753. 1970 Water Quality Improvement Act Place 91 to 224. 1972 Federal Water Pollution Control Amendments of 1972 petaliters 92 to 500. 1974 Safe Drinking Water Act Place 93 to 523. 1977 Clean Water Act Place 95 to 217. 1987 Water Quality Act Place 100 to 4. 1996 Safe Drinking Water Act Amendments of 1996. Land 1964 Wilderness Act Place 88 to 577. 1968 Wild and Scenic Rivers Act Place 90 to 542. 1970 Wilderness Act Place 91 to 504. 1977 Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act Place 95 to 87. 1978 Wilderness Act Place 98 to 625. 1980 Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act Place 96 to 487. 1994 California Desert Protection Act Place 103 to 433. 2010 California Desert Protection Act. Endangered Species 1946 Fish and Wildlife Coordination Act Place 79 to 732. 1966 Endangered Species Preservation Act Place 89 to 669. 1969 Endangered Species Conservation Act Place 91 to 135. 1972 Marine Mammal Protection Act Place 92 to 522. 1973 Endangered Species Act Place 93 to 205. 1979 Endangered Species Preservation Act Place 95,335. Hazardous Waste 1965 Solid Waste Disposal Act Place 89 to 272. 1970 Resource Recovery Act Place 91 to 512. 1976 Resource Conservation and Recovery Act Place 94 to 580. 1980 Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act Place 96 to 510. 1984 Hazardous and Solid Waste Amendments Act Place 98 to 616. 1986 Superfund Amendments and Reauthorization Act Place 99 to 499. 2002 Small Business Liability Relief and Brownfields Revitalization Act Place 107 to 118. Other 1947 Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act Place 80 to 104. 1969 National Environmental Policy Act Place 91 to 190. 1972 Federal Environmental Pesticide Control Act Place 92 to 516. 1976 Toxic Substances Control Act Place 94 to 469. 1982 Nuclear Waste Repository Act Place 97 to 425. 1996 Food Quality Protection Act Place 104 to 170. programs. Energy Star. In 1992, the EPA launched the Energy Star program, a voluntary program that fosters energy efficiency. Pesticide. EPA administers the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act and registers all pesticides legally sold in the United States. Environmental Impact Statement Review. EPA is responsible for reviewing environmental impact statements of other federal agencies' projects under the National Environmental Policy Act. Safer Detergent Stewardship Initiative. Through the Safer Detergent Stewardship Initiative, EPA's Design for the Environment recognizes environmental leaders who voluntarily commit to the use of safer surfactants. Safer surfactants are the ones that break down quickly to non-polluting compounds and help protect aquatic life in both fresh and salt water. Non-alphenol ethoxylates, commonly referred to as NPEs, are an example of a surfactant class that does not meet the definition of a safer surfactant. The Design for the Environment, which was renamed to EPA Safer Choice in 2015, has identified safer alternative surfactants through partnerships with industry and environmental advocates. These safer alternatives are comparable in cost and are readily available. Clean Ingredients is a source of safer surfactants. EPA Safer Choice. The EPA Safer Choice label, previously known as the Design for the Environment label, helps consumers and commercial buyers identify and select products with safer chemical ingredients without sacrificing quality or performance. When a product has the Safer Choice label, it means that every intentionally added ingredient in the product has been evaluated by EPA scientists. Only the safest possible functional ingredients are allowed in products with the Safer Choice label. Fuel economy. Manufacturers selling automobiles in the United States are required to provide EPA fuel economy test results for the vehicles, and the manufacturers are not allowed to provide results from alternate sources. The fuel economy is calculated using the emissions data collected during two of the vehicle's Clean Air Act certification tests by measuring the total volume of carbon captured from the exhaust during the tests. The current testing system was originally developed in 1972 and used driving cycles designed to simulate driving during rush hour in Los Angeles. During that era, prior to 1984, the EPA reported the exact fuel economy figures calculated from the test. In 1984, the EPA began adjusting city results downward by 10% and highway results by 22% to compensate for changes in driving conditions since 1972 and to better correlate the EPA test results with real-world driving. In 1996, the EPA proposed updating the federal testing procedures to add a new high-speed test and an air conditioner on test to further improve the correlation of fuel economy and emission estimates with real-world reports. The updated testing methodology was finalized in December 2006 for implementation with model year 2008 vehicles and set the precedent of a 12-year review cycle for the test procedures. In February 2005, the organization launched a program called Your MPG that allows drivers to add real-world fuel economy statistics into a database on the EPA's fuel economy website and compare them with others and the original EPA test results. It is important to note that the EPA actually conducts these tests on very few vehicles, while the public mistakenly presumes that this federal agency is hard at work conducting complicated tests on every new model of truck, van, car, and SUV. In reality, just 18 of the EPA's 17,000 employees work in the automobile testing department in Ann Arbor, Michigan, examining 200 to 250 vehicles a year, or roughly 15% of new models. As to that other 85% 95%. The EPA takes automakers at the word, without any testing, accepting submitted results as accurate. Two-thirds of the vehicles the EPA tests themselves are selected randomly, and the remaining third are tested for specific reasons. Although originally created as a reference point for fossil-fueled vehicles, driving cycles have been used for estimating how many miles an electric vehicle will do on a single charge. Air quality. The Air Quality Modeling Group is in the EPA's Office of Air and Radiation and provides leadership and direction on the full range of air quality models, air pollution dispersion models, and other mathematical simulation techniques used in assessing pollution control strategies and the impacts of air pollution sources. The AQMG serves as the focal point on air pollution modeling techniques for other EPA headquarters staff, EPA regional officers, and state and local environmental agencies. It coordinates with the EPA's Office of Research and Development on the development of new models and techniques, as well as wider issues of atmospheric research. Finally, the AQMG conducts modeling analyses to support the policy and regulatory decisions of the EPA's Office of Air Quality Planning and Standards. The AQMG is located in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina. Oil pollution. The Spill Prevention, Control, and Countermeasure Rule applies to all facilities that store, handle, process, gather, transfer, store, refine, distribute, use or consume oil or oil products. Oil products includes petroleum and non-petroleum oils as well as animal fats, oils and greases, fish and marine mammal oils, and vegetable oils. Mandates that a written plan is required for facilities that store more than 1,320 gallons of fuel above ground or more than 42,000 gallons below ground, and may reasonably be expected to discharge to navigable waters or adjoining shorelines. Secondary containment mandated at oil storage facilities. Oil release containment is required at oil development sites. EPA WaterSense. WaterSense is an EPA program designed to encourage water efficiency in the United States through the use of a special label on consumer products. It was launched in June 2006. Products include high-efficiency toilets, bathroom sink faucets, and irrigation equipment. WaterSense is a voluntary program, with EPA developing specifications for water-efficient products through public process and product testing by independent laboratories. Drinking water. EPA ensures safe drinking water for the public by setting standards for more than 160,000 public water systems nationwide. EPA oversees states, local governments and water suppliers to enforce the standards under the Safe Drinking Water Act. The program includes regulation of injection wells in order to protect underground sources of drinking water, select readings of amounts of certain contaminants in drinking water, precipitation, and surface water, in addition to milk and air, are reported on EPA's RadNet website in a section entitled EnviroFacts. In certain cases, readings exceeding EPA MCL levels are deleted and not included despite mandatory reporting regulations. A draft of revised EPA regulations relaxes the regulations for radiation exposure through drinking water, stating that current standards are impractical to enforce. The EPA is recommending that intervention is not necessary until drinking water is contaminated with radioactive iodine-131 at a concentration of 81,000 picocuries per liter, which is 27,000 times the current EPA limit of 3 picocuries per liter for long-term exposure. Radiation protection. EPA has the following 7 project groups to protect the public from radiation: radioactive waste management, emergency preparedness and response programs, Protective Action Guides and Planning Guidance for Radiological Incidents. EPA developed the manual to provide guideline for local and state governments to protect public from nuclear accident. EPA cleanup and multi-agency programs. Risk assessment and federal guidance programs. Naturally Occurring Radioactive Materials Program, Air and Water Programs, Radiation Source Reduction and Management. Research Vessel. On March 3, 2004, the United States Navy transferred USNS Bold of Stalwart-class ocean surveillance ship to the EPA, now known as OSV Bold. The ship, previously used in anti-submarine operations during the Cold War, is equipped with side-scan sonar, underwater video, water and sediment sampling instruments, used in study of ocean and coastline. One of the major missions of the Bold was to monitor for ecological impact sites where materials are dumped from dredging operations in U.S. ports. In 2013, the Bold was awarded to Seattle Central Community College by the General Services Administration. SCCC demonstrated in a competition that they would put it to the highest and best purpose, and acquired the ship at a cost of $5,000. Advance Identification. Advance Identification, or ADID, is a planning process used by the EPA to identify wetlands and other bodies of water and the respective suitability for the discharge of dredged and fill material. The EPA conducts the process in cooperation with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and local states and Native American tribes. As of February 1993, 38 ADID projects had been completed and 33 were ongoing. Freedom of Information Act processing performance. In the latest Center for Effective Government analysis of 15 federal agencies which received the most Freedom of Information Act FOIA requests, published in 2015, the EPA earned AD by scoring 67 out of a possible 100 points, i.e., did not earn a satisfactory overall grade.